You know the drill, put the questions in the chat. Meantime, I'm gonna share my screen and show you this recent study that just came out, I believe yesterday. That's sort of encouraging. Okay, can you see my screen? So this is the Paxlovid and the study published in JAMA Internal Medicine. What this researchers did, they looked at the very large cohort of patients at the VA system nationally. So there's 250,000 patients who were used as a comparison who had positive COVID, and approximately 35,000 patients on top of that received a Paxlovid. And so they basically compared this 246,000 patients to 35,000 patients, those who had Paxlovid and those who did not. Just want to show you results, which are very good. So in essence, there's a pretty dramatic, somebody's not muted. There's a pretty dramatic difference in outcome. So if you look at this, so this is the percent cumulative side effects. This graph represents death. This is hospitalization, and this is death or hospitalization. You can see a pretty major difference. I mean, we're talking a 50% reduction here or even more. So this is the percent rate of death after the disease was diagnosed. So, you know, the separation began right away and it kept increasing. So this is 180 days after the treatment. So 6 months later, you can still see that there's increased separation. And then I'm going to show you this one also. So if you look at sort of how, when you take Paxlovid in the long run, what happens for a period of 6 months, right? So this is the rate at 6 months. And you can see that a lot of problems, so the risk of them is much lower. So you're talking about arrhythmias, you're talking about different problems with coagulation, you're talking about kidney problems, muscle pains, things that were not about the same, or things like diabetes, cough, and there was something else and liver disease. Everything else seemed to be better and significantly better. I mean, so if you look at some of this confidence intervals, meaning that the chances of this result being very real is very narrow. So that's a good thing. Some things were not as encouraging. So if you look at the actual absolute risk reduction, it doesn't really work to cut out fatigue. So this is the actual effect. So it looks like fatigue, we have less tools. Paxlovid doesn't seem to did this whole lot, even though if you don't take Paxlovid, you had a high risk, but it's really, in reality, the absolute risk reduction didn't cross 1, which means that even though there are probably some improvement, but it didn't reach statistical significance. So I think it's overall very good news. This is a real life, very large cohort. It also is very interesting to notice that it didn't matter whether people were vaccinated. Let me see if where's the table? 1 second. There's a separate table with here. So this is patients less than 60. So people over 70 had the most significant improvement. So the largest risk reduction was in the people over 70. We kind of knew that, but it's good to have this confirmed on very large numbers. But it didn't really matter whether you were vaccinated or not. So over here, they had the prior vaccination status, and everybody had a risk reduction. Boosted, not boosted, 1 vaccine, 2 vaccine. The difference here is very small, by the way, so it kind of didn't matter. So bottom line, how do we take this? Well, and why am I presenting this, right? Because we already knew that this was there. Well, it's changing because I think I'm going to give everybody Paxlovid who wants it, no matter what the age is. I mean, it's robust enough of a data for me to say that if this happens, probably worth taking 5 days worth of Paxlovid, regardless of your age and comorbidities. So that's basically all I have for today, COVID related. Okay. Let's see what questions you have. Is it really true that bivalent shot efficacy goes down after 6 months? It sure is. Benita, if you want to slow listen to the slide, to the information about it, let me give you a link. I have presented this couple of weeks ago. So I'm putting the link to my YouTube video about this. And I kind of discuss it there as to sort of why I actually go in quite a detail. It's literally 25-minute video. So I went into great detail discussing the data and showing why I actually feel like at this point, if you had first set of vaccines plus minus boosters and you've had at least one episode of COVID, you probably don't want to take any additional vaccines. But guess what? If you get another one, you're definitely getting Paxlovid if you're my patient. So that's the whole point of today's summary, given this new study. Okay, so was there a study that compared metformin? Yeah, we looked at that last time. That wasn't, I don't think that study looked at the severity of COVID. I think it looked at long COVID. So this is kind of an additional study saying that, yes, Paxlovid versus metformin. No, I think that study that I looked at was metformin versus ivermectin, and I want to say one of the antidepressants, fluvoxamine, basically showing that those two were out. Metformin had some benefits in people who were very overweight. I think that's what we reviewed a couple of weeks ago, but I don't remember metformin versus Paxlovid. No, I don't. And how do you compare this? So this is a little different of the studies, right? If you ask me, well, that metformin study looked at the outcome for long COVID. This is much bigger study that's not randomized, so it does have more biases potentially, but the sheer volume of this study of 250,000 of control and 40,000 patients, 35,000 patients in an active arm, that's a very large population. If there are biases, there would be, it would be, I mean, it's always better to wait for a controlled trial, but, it's also a problem here. I mean, how are you going to get a controlled trial here, right? Because at this point, Paxlovid is more or less standard. It's going to be harder and harder to find people who will be agreeing in this case to take placebo. So we may end up being in a situation here where we're not going to have additional trials randomizing, looking for, say, long COVID. There could be a study, which there is a study actually proposed. I don't know where the recruitment is. And if anybody interested, I can try to find it. There is a study proposed to give a longer course of Paxlovid as prophylaxis of long COVID. I think that's a bad idea. I don't think that makes any sense because in the long run, Paxlovid could be pretty toxic if you take it for a long extended period of time. Short course seems to be. Short course is all about cutting down on a number of circulating virus, and that seems to be with 5-day course can be achieved quite successfully. So, all right, is a doctor able to prescribe Paxlovid to the patient if they don't meet the age requirements? So I think my point reviewing this is I'm going to lax my way of thinking about it. I'm going to give it to anybody. If I feel that the given patient, no matter what the age is, has some risks and or just very concerned and wants to take it, I'm going to prescribe it. Now, you're a doctor, you'll have to discuss it with him or her, because I don't know, I can't make decision for everybody there. And I'm not sure if the CDC or FDA is going to change the guidelines. I think currently it's still recommended for, don't quote me on this, I think it's 50 years or older, but I'm not exactly sure. If somebody has a minute, look it up as to what the current Paxlovid indication age-wise is. Okay, has there any been study on the effect? Okay, I'm not going to answer that, you guys. I'm not talking about 5G and COVID, okay? If somebody is interested in this topic, I have a list of trusted experts I can bring in. I, on purpose, did not try to research this topic. It's very controversial, and I am not qualified to do this research. You're required to have a very advanced understanding of physics, which I don't have. And I can't really truly judge this. Of course, there's no controlled trials on this. So I don't think I can speak to them one way or another. Doesn't make sense to get another booster 6 months after the last one. So the point is, no, I don't think it is. If you don't have any particular circumstances, like if you're very immune compromised, there may be a reason. So talk to your doc. But if you're not immune compromised and you're relatively healthy, you had COVID and you had boosters, it seems like doing another one every 6 months doesn't make any sense, because it doesn't, if you had the actual infection, you're protected for a lot longer than that. And so there doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. The question is what's going to happen 12 months out. We don't have a data. So I'm pretty sure we will have a data in upcoming months to answer that question. So how long should you space the boosters? Right now, the answer is probably 12 months or even less frequent. Definitely not every 6 months. That I will tell you that with certainty. The only exception to that rule is if you're very heavily immune compromised, and that you would have to discuss with your doc to figure out if this makes sense to boost yourself every 6 months. Great questions today, except for the 5G. Not that I dislike the question, Sheila. I don't want to open this can of worms, you guys. It's a very controversial topic, effect of EMF on anything. I do think there's some negative impact. I do think 5G is a problem, but I don't see how we're going to solve this issue. And I also don't see any political interest in having this discussion, nor am I going to stick my head out of the sand for this, because I just don't know how to talk about it. But if anybody, if there is a strong interest in this group, I will bring someone in. I promise. And watch out, it may not be what you wanted to hear if I bring that person in, but just let me know.
Can I say something before you go?
Sure.
I was interested in general, but what the question was, do you know any studies? Not necessarily for you to talk on the subject.
I do. I'm telling you. I'm not telling you what the
You're not telling.
No.
Okay, that's.
No, I'm not, because the studies are not what we would consider high standard, and they're controversial, and they're heavily impacted by different players. When you compare something like this to a study in a Veterans Affairs Hospital on a Paxlovid, I can present this in a sensible manner. I can stand to what I'm saying. If I analyze the study that I have no idea how it was conducted, who, and it's just a publication, I will not take an ethical stance on trying to interpret something that I'm very, very uncomfortable about. Does it make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. Thank you.
Sure. Well, you can ask me behind the closed door, whatever you want. And I can be a lot more open there, but not in general public. All right. Well, Aliza, thanks so much for being back. Wonderful to have you. And what do you have for us today? Dear, you muted. Sorry.
Better, everybody. So I'm going to set the intention not to be too tangential today, but full disclosure, I'm coming off of a full, deep weekend psychotherapy symposium, which was just incredible quality and inspiration. So if I veer from topic, feel free to pull me back, okay? I mentioned this the last time I came here, but for anybody who might not have been there, just kind of transparency. So yes, I'm a psychotherapist and family therapist, non-dual healer, as was mentioned. And I'm very committed to doing this work through a trauma-informed lens. And I'm really going to talk about that in terms of what that means kind of personally and what that means more collectively, okay, and how we look at larger systems of trauma and oppression, okay. The official title of my talk today is Wellness and Consciousness. So I want to define that and hopefully lead folks into kind of thinking about trauma and healing really from this, from a micro to a more macro lens, okay? So just, I'll briefly mention, okay, so this conference, I did a number of workshops. I'll just mention about 3 of them. One was with Leslie Korn, who does wonderful integrative nutrition work. This was a workshop in integrative methods for treatment of trauma. With Bessel van der Kolk, who wrote the book Body Keeps the Score, so big trauma focus, and with Ken Hardy on racial microaggressions in therapy, who was also a keynote speaker as well. And I really walked away from all these different workshops kind of with the same core fundamental principle, which is wounding and trauma stemming essentially from larger social constructs and developing more and more consciousness around that. So what does that mean at large when we're looking at our communities and society? And what does that mean micro level individually when we're looking at ailments really and suffering, psychological and physical, okay? So kind of coming back to this consciousness lens, okay? I'm doing this actively as we're talking right now. I think that starts with coming into our bodies, okay? Sort of bringing our focus for a moment into our bodies, our somas, okay? Somatic awareness, grounding in that. We'll be doing a mind-body practice later. Maybe we'll be able to ground ourselves even more deeply, okay? Starts with somatic awareness, also into cognitive awareness. So that is a lot of the mindfulness stuff too, where we watch thoughts, noticing thoughts to narratives, right? Like stories that we carry with us, okay? And constructs, so narratives and constructs, ideas about things that we impose on reality as if that's reality, right? We look at something through a pair of colored glasses, thinking everything is that color, forgetting that it's the lenses we're looking through. Okay, so bringing that all into our consciousness, which again has to do with wellness. Okay, and I really think about wellness as wholeness and kind of inclusion of all that we can that's present, okay, in front of us and within us. Okay, and as we move from the awareness of our somas to awareness of our thoughts and narratives to larger societal awareness, okay, that's when we start to see perhaps a little bit more clearly the context of narratives. When somebody's telling a story about something, where did that story come from? What's the canvas? What's the history, right? When a family comes to me, with some presenting issue and in pain, I want to speak to that pain and presenting issue. And I also want to understand context. What's the family history? Okay, what's some of the trauma perhaps? Okay, whether it be war, immigration, racism, okay? This larger societal awareness where we see the context of narratives, pain, and suffering, particularly where there is inequity or injustice. Okay, Dr. Ken Hardy said so eloquently, when we change what we look for, we change what we see. When we look for that inequity and injustice, we see it, I would say, almost everywhere. So we're focusing on systems of oppression and trauma that shape our society and individual experience. Okay, the stories we carry in our bodies and some of our physical distress. Some we're aware of, some we aren't even in touch with at times until we go into deeper process, and then we start to notice things in our bodies. So we understand that treating individuals, clients, patients without addressing systems at large, okay, which I'm privileged to be in this group today because I think there's a real consciousness around that. So treating individuals, clients, patients without treating systems at large, I think we're going to keep seeing the repetition of that same wounding. Okay, it can almost feel like a game of whack-a-mole where we might treat, one person, but then it shows up again in another because the system is not well. The larger structure. Okay? Part of family therapy training is in systems theory. So we do look at these larger systems. Okay, and we see the same wounds appear over and over again, because also this is true for family systems, like a nucleus, a nuclear family, but also larger systems. We see that the most vulnerable or marginalized will often be the most symptomatic because they're pointing out problems in the larger system. Okay. Dr. Gabor Mate, a Canadian physician who worked with addictions primarily, that's where his expertise is really known for. He talks about this in a number of his books. His newer book, The Myth of Normal, In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts is his book on addictions, talks about societal oppression he saw show up in his indigenous population, or he saw for addictions primarily. And he talks about a beautiful kind of tradition in the Lakota tribes where there would be a ritual when there was a sick member of the tribe, where everybody would gather around that sick member and thank that member for showing some larger issue within the tribe. So there was a collective consciousness, if you will, a collective responsibility for that one symptomatic or ill person. What would it be like if we, as a society, viewed illness that way? Okay. So just briefly coming back to applying this consciousness. Okay, so I'm aware that this is kind of maybe a little theoretical, a little philosophical, but it's also 100% applied. When we, like I quoted Dr. Hardy, when we change what we look for, we change what we see, and then we change our conversations. Okay, we change our conversations. Hopefully we can have more real and open conversations about systems of oppression and actually how we're part of those systems. We're born into them. Okay, whether it be from a position of privilege or subjugation. Okay, maybe we can have more honest conversations about that. And understand, again, this is a quote from Dr. Hardy, there's a web of mutuality there. That what's good for one is actually good for everyone, and we can't heal one without healing the other. It doesn't work that way. So I'm gonna end, and I'll leave room if there's any comments or questions, but I just want to sort of share my hope here. Okay, I'm committed to this work in my own practice and my own four corners and community. My hope is that we create communities that are conscious, see and heal as we start with our own healing and consciousness, which includes awareness and responsibility for the ills of society at large. Okay, so I'll stop there and just check in. I'm going to mention, if anybody's interested in doing any of this work a little bit more deeply, I'm actually, I'm hoping to do some group work around this, oppression and subjugation. So if anybody is interested in that, I think my website should be accessible, and there's an email on there that you can feel free to reach out if you're interested in doing any of that work more deeply. Okay, I'll stop and just check in if there are any questions or comments. Happy to address them.
There are some comments, but I don't think they're actual questions.
Okay.
I don't know if you, Aliza, to take a look at this, see if you have any response to comments.
Oh, okay. I've got to scroll down. It looks like.
All the way from.
Okay. 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 So thank you. Appreciate your time, and I will turn it over to Naheed, my colleague. Okay. Oh, a link to my website. Sure.
So as Aliza's doing that, I want to say it's kind of interesting how group dynamics come together, because she talked a lot about some of the things that I'm not going to talk about it from a theoretical standpoint. I'm hoping to bring some practices to ground it in. So I think she did a great prelude. We've never met, but she just sort of, we both seemed to channel what each other was going to do and say. So yeah, thank you. That was really amazing. So that's my comment. And I'm sure there's plenty to say on just even one aspect of what you were talking about. So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Naheed Oberfeld. This is my first time here, so I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and to share some things with you. And my goal is to actually do some mind-body exercises. Really, it's mind, body, and spirit exercises, because you cannot forget the spirit, however you want to define spirit, right? So let me start. I have just two screens, two PowerPoints that I wanted to share with you. Just a little bit about who I am. So as I mentioned, I am a mind-body coach. So what exactly does that mean? Or a mindset coach? And I use mind-body techniques. I call myself both, actually. It's really anything in our life first starts with a mindset. And what's mindset? Aliza talked about it, stories. What are the stories we're telling ourselves? What is the context of the stories that we're telling ourselves? And then how does it manifest in our lives? And so I work with people in two ways. One is on success, professional success, financial success. A lot of stories related to that, right? We have so many stories about money, good, bad, indifferent, too much, too little, right? But today I'm not going to focus on that, because I wanted to do something more kinesthetic. The second part, believe it or not, where our stories really show up is in our bodies. And so we're going to do a short little demonstration. So let me move on. It's we're going to do a short little demonstration so that you can see how very clearly a few minutes of, there are many techniques. I'm going to teach you one, maybe you've already heard of it, but maybe you do breathing, or maybe you do something else, mindful meditation. The one that I am going to focus on is called emotional freedom technique. If you've heard of it, you probably know it as tapping, because you're tapping on your acupressure points. And we're going to, like I say, we're going to do it as a breathing demonstration. And as we tap on acupressure points, some interesting things are happening. And we now know this because there's been a lot of research through MRI studies and other types of studies. First and foremost, the very first thing it does is it reduces our fight, flight, and freeze response. And we oftentimes don't even know how much we're stuck in stress, right? It really comes down to stress, anxiety, fear, doubt, all those past experiences or past stories we project into the future, good, bad, or indifferent. And now we're either living in the past or we're living in the future. And in truth, one of the things I'm very interested in is in physics. And if you understand anything about physics, there's only one moment, the now moment. There is no past and present the way we think. It's not a linear concept like we think it. Okay. So as we reduce our fight, flight, and freeze response, one of the benefits is that it relaxes our muscles. We don't realize how tense, how tight we are more often than not. I joke and I say we clench our sphincter really tightly because we don't feel safe. And so as soon as you relax your muscles, the benefit of that is greater oxygen, greater blood flow. And that, by the way, is where we have our space of optimal health, right? That is really where we're in that place where we're more in charge, or at least we feel more in charge, we feel more confident, we feel more relaxed. And the way that I see our bodies is that it is designed to bring forth optimal healing. It is designed to heal itself. You cut yourself, there's a scab, there's inflammation, there's a scab, and the body knows how to heal itself. If only, and sometimes, maybe not all the time, but if only we can get out of our own ways. So that's kind of what we're going to be focusing on. So I don't see everybody because I have my PowerPoint presentation on, so I don't see everybody. So if anybody has a question along the way, please just unmute yourself and go ahead and ask it, okay? So we're going to do a demonstration, and I'm going to invite everybody to participate. It's really up to you. The more you participate, obviously, the more you're going to get out of it. And who knows, you might find a technique that is quite useful and beneficial for you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain a little bit. If you've never heard of tapping, don't worry. I've put the list of the tapping points that we are going to tap along, okay? So we're going to follow this. And the way it's going to work is as we repeat certain things, and I'm going to show you what that means, but as we repeat certain things, we're going to tap. I'm going to tap on all these different points, right? So number 1 is the karate chop point. Number 2 is your inner eyebrow. Number 3 is the side of your eye. Number 4 is under your eye. So we're just going to basically follow down the line over here. We're skipping number 8, and then we go up to number 9. And as we focus on, as we tap on these different acupuncture points, I'm going to ask you to repeat certain things. So I think it'd be best, because we have a bunch of people here, stay on mute, but repeat it out loud to you, okay? That's where you're going to get the best benefit from this. So we're going to do an exercise to see how much your level of stress, anxiety, whatever you want to call it, is impacting your ability to take a deep breath. So the first thing I'm going to ask you to do is just kind of take a cleansing breath. Nothing too deep, nothing too shallow. Just breathe in a way that will be normal for you. Right? Do that a couple of times. Now I'm going to ask you to take as deep a breath as you possibly can. So take a deep breath in and let it out. And I'm going to ask you, and this is really important, to rate that breath that you took. From 0 to 10, how deep of a breath? 10 being that was the deepest breath I have ever taken, you know, like a real belly laugh where you've got to breathe deeply. And 1 is where it's really shallow and you're literally gasping for breath. So I want everybody to take a moment and write down, and if you're willing and able to play with me, go ahead and write it in the chat. Write down what it is that your breath is in this moment. So take a moment to do that. Okay, perfect. So now I'm going to ask you to follow along with me. In fact, I'm actually going to stop sharing so that you can see me fully. So I want everybody to start with a karate chop point. It really doesn't matter. You're going to see me go left and right. And I'm going to take a moment and just kind of say, okay, so we got a lot of 7 and 8s, which is really fantastic. Me, on the other hand, I'm closer to a 6. I'm giving a presentation. I'm focused. I'm a little anxious. So I'm going to go with 6 for me. But every time I tell you to put in your number, I want you to put in your number, okay? So follow along with me. Every time I think about taking this deep breath, so say it out loud to yourself. Every time I think about taking this deep breath at the level of a 6, whatever your number is, this part of me that's just not able to take a deep breath. And I choose to love and accept myself. So this is what is known as the setup statement. We're going to do it a couple more times, slightly differently. Every time I think about taking a deep breath, I can only accomplish at the level of a 6. And I really want to take a big, deep breath. And I choose to love and accept myself anyway. One last time. My breath at the level of a 6. I have all the stress and anxiety that's keeping me from taking a full, deep breath. And I choose to love and accept myself. So now we're going to move on to our acupuncture points, starting with the inner eye. So I'm just turning my head. You don't have to. So you use 2 hands. My breath at the level of a 6. Thinking about my breath at the level of a 6, outer eye point. Go to the under eye point. Holding on to this breath at the level of a 6. Go to the under the nose point. I cannot take a breath deeper than the level of a 6. Chin point. This deep breath at the level of a 6. Collarbone point. Holding on to this deep breath at the level of a 6. Go to the top of the head. Holding on to whatever stress and anxiety. Go back to the inner eye point. I don't even know that I may have. Outer eye point. I'd love to get rid of any stress and anxiety. Go to the under eye point. That may be keeping me from a deeper breath. Under the eye, this deep breath. Chin point. I would love to go deeper than my level 6 breath. Collarbone point. Wouldn't it be great for me to go to a breath at the level of a 10? Top of the head, my deep breath. I choose to love and accept myself unconditionally. So let's stop over there. We did a couple of rounds of tapping. I know it might have felt a little weird. I should have explained that. We're tapping on our face and sort of like monkey see, monkey do kind of thing. So let me ask you a question. Anybody who increased, whose number changed, whatever your number was, it may have gone down, it may have gone up, but anybody whose number changed, you can just kind of raise your hands, your electronic hands or real hands. Yeah, Beatrice, your number changed. Anybody else's changed? Okay. Anybody's number went higher. Actually, that's what, I'm sorry, we forgot to do that. Take a deep breath right now. Let's take a deep breath and rate it. That was the most important part that we missed. Now let me ask you, did anybody's number change? Can't see everybody, so yes, so a few of you have changed, a few of you wrote in there. Okay, so let me ask you if anybody wants to share, what do you think changed in order to allow you to increase your breath? Do you feel you may have relaxed a little bit? Do you feel like you may have just kind of felt a little less stressed? What do you think happened?
Go ahead and unmute if you want to respond.
Yeah, go ahead and unmute. That would be perfect. You took a slower breath. Thank you, Irene. You took a slower breath. And that's exactly it. So just a 3 or 4 minute exercise shows us, wow, so somebody went from Linda went from a 5 to a 9, possibly 10, more relaxed right now. That's perfect. But it shows us how much in tune our bodies are really with our emotions. Like we all know it, we've learned about it. It's been said over and over again, but this is an exercise that kind of tells you exactly how your body is doing based on how your emotions are, and vice versa. You can actually shift your emotions based on how your body is feeling as well. So was this interesting? I want to take this one step further, but I wanted to first understand, was this an interesting demonstration for you guys? Okay. So this was just a demo. This was just to be able to share with you how you can shift that around. So Isla said that it took her focus away from her conscious mind into her unconscious mind. Release my thoughts. That's perfect. So here's another way that we can take this. Remember I said that I work in 2 different areas, and one of them is on chronic pain. So in case somebody's, if you guys decide that this is interesting, does anybody have some pain? And everybody can have their own pain. It really actually doesn't matter for the purposes of this technique. But does anybody have pain, whether it's knee, it's back, it's hip, that you'd like to get a little more relief on? And we'll all focus on getting our own relief, but it would be nice to have one. Chronic AL, can you explain what, is that all over? Chronic pain all over? Irene, is that what you're saying?
Yes, arthritis.
Chronic arthritis. Okay, right now. So this is the beauty of this technique. It has to be right now. Where do you feel it most?
My shoulders.
Shoulder. Okay, and if you were to give it a number from 0 to 10, the pain 10 being the absolute highest. And guys, I want everybody to do the same thing. It could be, a slight little sore toe or sore foot. It doesn't matter where you're feeling it. Pick one place you're finding it right now, and it's in your shoulders. And then I want you to rate it from 0 to 10. So Irene, you said at the level of a 5.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And so every right shoulder versus left shoulder, Irene?
Same.
It's both.
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So everybody, so you can mute yourselves again, and I would like everybody to kind of participate because you're going to get this. So yeah, so everybody has their own area. So when I say arthritis in both shoulders, you guys add in your own individual points. All right. So let's go. Everybody start with the karate chop point. So every time I think about this arthritis that I've been holding on to in both my shoulders, at the level of a 5, it really keeps me from enjoying my best life. And I choose to love and accept myself and my body, even if I feel like at times it's giving out on me. Okay, we're going to do that 2 more times. So remember to put in your location and your number. Every time I think about holding on to this arthritis in both of my shoulders, I would love to get some resolution and reduce this pain today. Maybe from a 5 all the way down. And I choose to love and accept myself. One last time. My arthritis in both my shoulders at the level of a 5. It brings me so much pain and discomfort. And I choose to love and accept myself anyway. So we're going to the inner eye point. All this pain and discomfort. Outer eyes, all this pain and discomfort at the level of a 5. Under the eyes, all this pain, discomfort at the level of a 5. Under the nose, it keeps me from living my best life. Chin point, there are times when I have, and you can put whatever emotion comes up for you, this anger, this resentment, this frustration at my body. Every time I think about this pain at the level of a 5. Top of the head, go back to your emotions. All this anger, all this frustration and pain. Inner eyes, it stops me from living my best life. Outer eyes, this part of me that would love to have a resolution today. Under the eyes, all this pain, anger, frustration. Under the nose, holding on to it chin point at the level of a 5, collarbone point, every time I think about my shoulders. And I choose to love and accept myself. So everybody, let's stop. I want everybody to take a few deep breaths. So in through your nose and out through your mouth. I'm going to do it one more time. In through your nose, out through your mouth. And the last time I'd like you to hold it. So in through your nose, hold, and then slowly breathe it out. All right, so I want everybody to tune into the areas of your body that you had indicated. And let's see what's shifted. And we're just playing here. So don't force it one way or the other, and don't feel bad if nothing has shifted, okay? And here's the kicker. Because I brought in the emotions, it is possible we got the pain to be a little bit higher, right? So there is a possibility that that might have happened. But don't worry about it. It's not a bad thing. It's releasing it. So I'm going to just reach out again and ask you guys. So how many people have felt that there was a shift in the level of their pain from the beginning to now? Anybody noticed any shifts or changes? I can't see everybody, so if you want to say anything, I definitely recommend you either put it in the chat or raise your hand. I think that would help. Okay, so Irene, you went lower. Good. So we started at a 5. Where are you now? You can put that in the chat. I'm just going to answer Jennifer. Yes, you are absolutely right. There are acupressure points. So let me step back a little bit. And now that you've done the demonstration, and Isla, you said you feel less tight as well. That's perfect. So now I'm going to explain it, because sometimes it's easier to do the demonstration, experience it, and then let me explain it. Oh, great, Sheila. Great. Your pain went away. I'm so glad to hear that. So the first thing that I want you to be able to recognize is that as we brought in emotions, these are stuck emotions in our bodies. They're emotions from old stories that we don't even realize are there. So as we are acknowledging it and we're tapping on areas of our face especially, we're releasing it from the part of our brain which is known as the amygdala. Amygdala has memory with strong emotion attached to it. So the acupuncture points were created some 4,000, 5,000 years ago. It's actually part of Chinese medicine. And so they had identified 2 things. So each acupressure point, which there are thousands, I don't know them all, there are literally thousands of them, the minor and the major ones, have 2 things associated with it. One is it's a particular, it's linked to a particular body. Your inner eye point is your stomach meridian. So there's no intuitive connection between an acupressure point and where it is in your body, okay? So that's one thing to understand. And then the second part about that acupressure point, it's connected to a body part, but it's also connected to an emotion. So there's a lot of fear. The inner eye point brings out a lot of fear. There are many points actually related to fear. That's just one of them. So there are definitely acupressure points that are connected to certain emotions and certain physical locations as well. So that was a good question. Let me see. Has there been any studies comparing EFT tapping to acupressure or acupressure massage, acupuncture, when it comes to reducing inflammation in the body? So that I don't know. Some years ago, when I checked Harvard Medical School, and maybe this is a Dr. Kogan question, I don't know if he just generally goes through PubMed or something, but some years ago they had they've done some studies on acupuncture and its efficacy, and acupuncture and acupressure are pretty similar. It's just it's more of a manual stimulation as opposed to an electric stimulation, because they're not putting the needle and they're not putting an electric charge on it. So
I agree. I don't expect anyone ever will conceive of study like this because there's such a different modalities with such a different outcomes and different targets that it's just, it's like comparing apples and oranges. So I wouldn't expect this to be done, but it's an interesting question, right? Is some of the tapping actually activate something on the meridians? I bet it does. And I bet that the very experienced acupuncturists may actually have an answer to this, and to some degree, actual answer compared to just conversation like this. We could, if you guys hold off this question and don't forget it, because I'm sure I'll forget, then next time we either have Angela or Didra or somebody else who is experienced, like, or Ashley, it's worth asking them. I guess there is a relationship. It's just not, you need to be an expert in acupuncture to try to comment.
Yeah, so Al is asking whether the acupuncture points are the same in EFT, and the answer is yes. It's exactly the same points. It's just manual stimulation versus the needle and also the electric stimulation. So I have done both. And I think that probably the difference between EFT is we bring in the emotional component. So if anybody who's done acupuncture, they will ask you about what's going on in your life, but they don't bring in the emotional component. And the reason for that is, let me give you a little bit of history. The forefather of EFT was known as TFT, thought field therapy, and it was created by an American psychologist and a therapist, and Dr. Roger Callahan. And so he brought in this part, and he married it with Western psychology. So that's why we bring in the talking part of it with the EFT, with the tapping portion. So that's kind of how it got started. So some of the other questions that you're asking, how do you keep the pain away? That's the number one question, right? So pain comes from old stories that we're storing in our body. And so that's one of the things that I talk to people a lot about. And if anybody's interested in uncovering what their old stories are, I do offer a complimentary 30-minute consultation that's, you can come in, learn a lot about what's going on, and I can put a link in the chat so that you can just schedule it for yourself. But really the only way to sustainably get rid of it is to work on those old emotions. And those old emotions are old stories. And oftentimes it starts, when you're 5 years old and somebody said this and your mom said that, and you don't even recognize that it's stuck in your psyche. But this is why Roger Callahan created this, which is you don't have to be stuck in 10 years of therapy, right? That's what was happening. He was having clients coming to him decade over decade, and things have shifted. I don't want to suggest that therapy is not good. It is actually very good since the times of Freud, at least. But it's about uncovering those old stories and having a technique that you can move through it. So I don't know if I answered. Actually, I was asking if there are ear points that we can tap on as well for ear points. Yes, there are ear points. Absolutely, their ears, their shoulders. I mean, I picked. So I studied under Dr. Dawson Church, who's also a therapist. And so he's picked some of the basic points that are relevant for everybody. And that's basically the points that I use today. So that's why it was just a very, very tiny amount of points. It's still reducing. Yeah, Irene, your shoulder pain is, yes, it will until you think about your old story. But this is a way to be able to release them. You uncover them, you acknowledge them, and you sever the emotion from the story. The answer is always the same. I mean, the story always remains, but you don't have that same emotional connection to that story. That bridge is severed. Okay, well, thank you, Irene. I'm glad you like the answer. Anything else? I don't know if you guys have ever done anything like this before, but I do want to say thank you for playing along with me. I was a little unsure as to who would be interested.
Well, it sounds like this was very well received. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. And as I said, I'm just going to put the link to my online calendar. So if anybody's interested in learning more or doing like a discovery session to understand how to move forward, I'm happy to talk.
Naheed, can you put your website or
yes,
something that's also there so people have access before we wrap up?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, next Friday, everybody, it's kids' spring break. I don't know if I'll be able to join. I may prioritize skiing at Mount Snow over being with you. I hope you will forgive me, but if I tire out early on the Friday, then I'll join. So, and we're gonna have a Robin Ringgold, intuitive activator alchemist. Wow, that sounds fascinating. Shamanic. And who's
Yeah,
gonna be
Robin was with us last year.
okay. So, and who's gonna be with Robin for now? Just Robin?
It's gonna be all Robin. Robin's gonna do the wellness talk and the mind body practice because I think I remember last year she was saying that, you know, she wasn't really able to get into it in the fullness that she would like because she didn't have enough time in that 30 minutes.
Okay, well, I'll make an effort to show up. I don't know, as I said, no promises. And everybody enjoy the rainy weather.
Did we get a link for Aliza's? I didn't.
Yeah, Alice, do you mind? She put it before, but please put that again. I thought that you did put something in, maybe not. She's putting it in. Everybody take a minute before we end. Take a look at that.
And also have
Great, thank you.
in the email I send out
There
today,
we go.
but it was the links to both of their websites were in yesterday's email as well.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Janet.
You're welcome.
Reminder, everybody, so April, Janet, correct me if I'm wrong, April 21st, we have the next song symposium. We will be talking about microbiome, relationship,
Gut
gut
health.
microbiome. So please note that we will not have the standard 2 to 3 p.m. meeting because we will be having song symposium. So I hope you'll register and come to that. It's free. And yes, don't forget. Did you guys do daylight saving? Yes, we already did. I know, I know, Mark.
Mark, I'm sorry.
You know, oh, he just showed up. Oh, that's painful.
You guys, those of you who don't know, Mark comes to us from New Zealand. He's one of our integrative medicine faculty members and graduates of the program. And it's about 5 o'clock or 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning where he is. So bless him.
Yeah, but that's what those karate crazy people do. They can get up at any time of night and just jump right into the meeting. I don't know how they do this, but they do that.
Well, it's 8 o'clock in the morning, but that's when you guys were starting. So now I need to be up an hour early. So, okay. Thank you. Have a great week.
I think there's a general dissatisfaction with the whole, daylight saving thing.
Nonsense.
Maybe US will eventually at some point lose it crazy and join some states that don't have it.
I mean,
Well,
we're
it's 3 o'clock.
This silliness.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Love, peace, and hair grease.
Bye.